Pushcart-nominated author Heather-Mateus-Sappenfield is joining us on today's First Friday Big Blend Radio Toast to the Arts show, and she's going to be talking about her prize-winning short story collection. It's called Lyrics for Rock Stars, and it totally rocks. You got to read it. I love that title, too. It's awesome. It's set in the West, which we love, and then she's based up in Colorado, one of the most awesome states on the planet. And the story, the collection of stories really trace women's stories across generations, which is always fascinating. And so I encourage you to go to her website, now you could pronounce her middle name in so many ways, and I want to go Dutch on her, so she's gonna correct me. Heather-Mateus, that's Mateus, Sappenfield.com. So Heather, welcome.
Thank you. It's Mateus. Just so
Mateus.
Yeah.
See, I was on Mateus.
Yeah. Portuguese Azorian. Yeah.
Oh. See, because we lived in South Africa for many years, and I speak Afrikaans, so it was immediate for me to go Mateus. And I had a lot of Portuguese friends.
That works as well. Either one.
Hey,
but yeah,
I was kind of close. Everybody knows I can't pronounce anything. From living in different countries, I can't pronounce anything. You'd think it'd be the opposite, but it's not. But you could say Mateus. No,
yes,
that would be
that too.
No, I like it, but Sappenfield, that I've never heard that name before. That's a whole different one too. That's cool.
That's
one's
cool my
name.
husband's. Yeah.
Well, tell him good going.
I like it though.
Yeah, it's unique for sure. And I love the title of your book, Lyrics for Rock Stars. I love that. How did that come up for you?
Thank you. Well, this collection has been a 20-year journey for me. Writing the first story, I quit teaching English at the high school I was working at to stay home with my daughter because she had started talking with the Australian accent, speaking of accents, of the daycare lady. And I thought, paradigm shift. Not that I don't love an Australian accent, but so I decided to stay home, and I literally wrote the first story during that time there with her, and just it's been a long evolution. And one of the things that has been part of the evolution, and that was one of the keystones of that, was coming to that title. And I came actually from the collection initially after I got my master's degree. I entered it in a bunch of lofty contests, and it did really well. It was a finalist in almost all of them, among them the Flannery O'Connor Award. And I thought, well, I can only be a bridesmaid so long. There must be something I'm missing. So I put it in the drawer, and I published 2 young adult novels in the meantime. And grew a lot as a human, raised my teenage daughter now. She was getting older, and, you grow. And right about the time of her 21st birthday, actually, I pulled the collection back out of the drawer and looked at it with new eyes. And there's a story toward the middle of the collection called Lyrics for Rock Stars. And in it, I had always assumed there's a very pregnant gold digger who, in this interaction out in the wild, she's sitting on a rock so her husband can see her while he's fishing. It's this big rock. And what she assumes is a hippie comes up and is fishing below her, and she has this conversation with him that basically begins to show her the error of her ways. It's really just an enlightening moment for her. And I had always assumed as a mother and a woman that I identified more with that pregnant character. But then as I looked at the collection with new eyes, I realized it was sort of this aha moment that I was actually the hippie that's fishing, and he actually turns out to be a songwriter. And they have this conversation where she says, so you're famous, you write songs, and she asks that question, and he says tune some, lyrics mostly, and she says for rock stars, people I've heard of, and he says stars, sure. And she's like, well, who? And then he basically says, names a few people, and then she says, I don't know if I'd like that, hearing, my life on the radio night after night after night. And he says, oh, I love it. It helps me groove to the beat of anyone that's listening to my songs, that we connect. And I went, oh my gosh, that's what I'm doing as a writer. That's my motivation. And that's the connection I made. And so I love it, especially because these are like the lyrics, but then every single person who reads the collection, they have their own beat, their own experience, you know. And there's that great quotation about no two readers ever read the same book. Mm-hmm. And so each person who comes to the stories brings their music, who they are, their past, all of that, and experiences my lyrics in their own way, creating basically a new song each time.
Well, it's just like, you know, we do a lot with music and reading, even just looking at the contents. You've got two sections, songs of innocence, songs of wisdom. It's like side A and B of an album.
Yeah.
And when you're reading through what I like, just, I don't know how to put it into words, but I'll try. What I like about your writing is that it's these internal thoughts of what's going on of someone, mostly women, children as well. The children, and it's Nancy. You know how artist Victoria Chick is, that she's contemporary figurative art. So she does these movements. So like if a cat, and she does a lot of cats, a cat's moving from A to B, just maybe extending its paw. We love animals, so here it is. So the cat's moving the paw, but there's this, everyone's going to look at that movement in a different way, but there's this internal thing that's going on that a cat knows exactly what it's doing, or that thought. And so you have this way of, like, you know, it's like almost like a movie where, you know, someone's on the bus and going through their thoughts in a movie, and you hear the music, but you know that their thoughts are rambling and doing this and that. So you have, I don't know, but it's moving, and it's like these, I don't know, it's transitory in a way. I don't know how to explain it, but it's that your brain's doing stuff, and you're stepping into someone's brain and their soul.
Yes. Oh, I love that you got that and experienced that with the book, because that as a writer is what I'm hoping to achieve exactly, is to bring the reader into that character's experience, and to watch and be with them as they move through basically all of the different layers of life throughout the day, right? And so there's, you know, I'm also a big person for history, and I love my state and I love the West. So those are very, very present. And so, you know, the characters tend to be not only moving through history of place, and then maybe unconsciously interacting with it, and then realizing they are or maybe never realizing it, but that's having an effect on them. But then also, it's the same thing with the readers. It's what they are bringing in their personal history, and then their social history, and all those layers are there, and they're trying to just be an integrated whole person, right? And so it's just how those things weave together to affect how we move through the day. We're all doing it, especially now during COVID, you know. And so I love that you got that. But the key is I have to weave those things together and yet leave space for the reader to identify that, right? Like the cat's paw that's reaching, if there was a whole lot of stuff around it, you might not notice the paw, you know, if there's a lot of distractions. So writing in a way that fleshes out the character completely in their experience, yet leaves room for the reader to come and experience the story as well.
I like that, because, okay, I'll just in even the first story, you know, you've got a little young sister and brother going out, sneaking out of the house, which, you know, my brother and I used to do all the time. Not that we went far, but we still believed we were sneaking out, you know, to our own backyard, which was pretty big. And we used to sneak out and go look at what different insects were doing, and you know, watching different birds, and very natureified. But I felt like, oh, here goes Ricky and I, you know, and you know, and we would take notes. And then there was at the back fence there was a boxer, and there was a hole in the fence. There was a wooden fence, and down at the bottom was a knot hole that we somehow made pop out, and the boxer would put his nose through. And then we'd go in, we would take different kinds of foods and eat them, and then blow through, like he'd put his nose and then we'd blow in his nose. And it was really funny, because most of the time we'd sneeze, and then back the nose would come, and then we got to peanut butter and the tongue came through. You know, so we used to spend our mornings like sneaking out of the house to go play with the boxer next door. But and that's where it took me. You know, that's where that story
Perfect.
took me. Yeah.
Wow.
I enjoyed it. I
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
good.
Well, that was a touching story too. The mom, that poor mom, man,
Yeah.
she was a unhappy soul, and she really needed someone to just give her a big hug, man, and just get past the anger part to the hugging and healing.
Right.
And it does. I mean, I don't want to. That's the thing. There's short stories, and I love short stories too because
That
you
could
can
be a
skip around
novel,
the book.
man.
You can skip around the book, but I do want to read it how you've published it because it goes through how you laid it out, just like an album. A musician creates a set list, and that's what it's like. It's like that. And you do want to go off and sit. It's fall, and you want to go sit under a tree with your favorite fall beverage and just read, and as leaves come down on you. I feel like reading it, like, to me, it is like the Colorado aspen setting. It's got to be beautiful right now. You've got to be in beautiful.
Yes. It's peak aspen. It's a little early this year. It seems to be getting earlier every year anymore, but we're early this year. We've had such a drought, right? And the aspens have been early, and it actually last week and last weekend I think we're at the peak, but it's so beautiful. Yeah, with the aspens, and
that is
gorgeous here right now.
Yeah. Don't you think that books in fall season, there's something about it? I know books are good year round, but I have a thing about it.
Yes, I would absolutely agree. And you know what I think also is I'm a very connected to nature person, almost sort of a very visceral person. And right now, like where I live, I'm in Vail, and so I'm up in the mountains. And when I go hiking or biking, I mean, there's big piles of bear poop everywhere. They're just eating constantly. And I don't take the trash out at night right now. The bears are so active. And
cool.
So, but I feel almost like I'm a little bit like a bear, like I want to hunker down and eat a whole bunch, and get ready for winter and read and, curl up on the couch. So, yes, I agree. There's something about fall that makes me want to get, hunker down and get in story or narrative.
Fireplace reading.
Ooh. It's interesting because when we lived on the other side of, on the equator where you only had really 2 seasons, wet season and dry season.
Yeah.
And for the first year or two, it was kind of disconcerting. It's like, well, where's my fall? Where's my winter? Where,
Yes.
And it was either spring or summer to me. They said they had a winter, but I didn't feel a winter. It was either spring or summer. And it was kind of like your rhythm. You had to create a new rhythm.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah.
I would miss the change of seasons if we didn't have it, And the equinox, we're just a week past the equinox.
Yeah.
Exactly. The transition.
It's so nice. And I was going to say, with writing with nature, because you're so connected to nature. And by the way, this is Toast of the Arts and Parks show. But do you have are there specific parks, and do you, when you're hiking, because to me that's a thinking time and looking at things and looking at all the little minute details that go into like living things like plants and looking at the tree veins and everything. But I'm thinking, and does that happen for you walking? Is that part of your? Does that help you in creating the stories, and then do you have to suddenly write them down or talk into your phone and record them?
You're sort of reading my mind, aren't you? So, yes, very much being outside, riding on my bike or hiking, or in the winter, I backcountry ski or ski on Vail Mountain. So when I'm out doing those things, I think it's really, really important. As a writer, I can get kind of in a little shell and maybe even write too long during the day or get too caught up in what I'm doing. And so it's really important for me to stop in a place where I can pick up tomorrow and it'll be easy, maybe something that's interesting, and then to head out and to be in those open and wild places or in those spaces, wide spaces that feel open to me are hugely important. I would always need to live on the edge of some place that was wild or a park or something where I could be out like that. And it is a huge part of that. The moving of my body and letting things just work themselves out. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever watch the wildlife and pretend they're human and then go make a story? Like,
you're weird, Nancy. But back to the cat paw, though.
No, but it's funny.
No, yes, very much so. I could definitely, and I think about that all the time, and from the animals' perspectives of us, like these crazy humans, what the heck?
Yeah.
And in all honesty, so we had a really unique situation with COVID here in Vail because Vail Mountain just closed in March, right? I mean,
wow.
And that's their prime high ski season, right? And people could get out and about, around the mountains and on the mountain. And it was so interesting to see, especially as we transitioned into summer and we were mountain biking and hiking, and there weren't people here until mid-July is when things started to pick up again. The wildlife just came back. Places that are usually so busy, the wildlife was everywhere. And, like a fox would be out, coming out onto the road and look at me as I was riding my bike up like, oh, what are you doing here? It's been a while. We were enjoying things. And so
go home.
That I really like that aspect of things.
Well, I love that coyotes were walking the streets of San Francisco.
I know, cool.
That
cool.
was awesome to me. We were actually we were sheltered in place in a friend's. She's retiring and selling her bed and breakfast Homestead Inn in 29 Palms. So you could see Joshua Tree National Park from her back patio. Like
beautiful.
That's how close she is.
I love Joshua Tree.
Isn't it magic? We used to live out there, and she's a close friend, and so we're out there, and then suddenly like this is canceled, that's canceled, and next thing you know, sorry, Jerry, we're living here for a while, and then our second destination, we went up through Yerington, Nevada, then went to Northwest Colorado for about 10 days. We stayed in. We went to Grand Junction and Palisade, a lot in Palisade, and then went down to Florence. Like down, we wanted to visit the prison.
Yes.
No, we didn't do the prison, but we drove down through, and we've done Rocky Mountain National Park. Last year we did Rocky Mountain and Greeley, but we went down through the Grand Mesa, that Grand Mesa byway, the scenic byway through the forest, and some of the overlooks were completely covered with grass, like no cars ever parked here before. Even through Curasanti National Recreation Area. It was Curasanti, however you pronounce it. Here we go again.
You got it.
It was like the overlooks where normally cars have driven over and it's like worn out. There was wildflowers and things and grass. Then I'm like, keep off the grass, man. So it's interesting.
The
what's
rewilding
happened.
of places. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So there is that transition, and that's what your book is representing too, are people going through series of changes. It's like history.
Yes.
This is how it's always been, but maybe not. Look at the burros. You brought in burro racing. Like, I love burros and donkeys.
Me too.
They're so cool.
Yeah, my father was a burro racer, and so I grew up with. I mean, it just was something I grew up with, and people are so intrigued by it. But it really was a fun thing, and so yes, the racing. And burro racing, for those that don't know, it's basically back in the day with when my father was doing it. There was a circuit of 3 or 4 races in these high mountain towns, and it would commemorate the early mining days. When like Leadville, Colorado, was one of the biggest cities in the state. And you basically, shoot off the gun, and they would run out of town and then up, winding mountain road to this top of some ridiculously high pass, and then back down. It would be like 30 miles or a marathon with the donkey. And it was like the original first ultra endurance racing that existed. And it was just really interesting. So now I think there's, they aren't quite as far, and there's more of a circuit, but it still exists, and people do it quite a lot. So I haven't been in a while, but it's fun. And the top burros just zoom; they pull their runners. But there's always the hilarious stuff to watch as well.
That's amazing.
Have you ever been to Oatman, that little town where the
Arizona.
donkeys get in Arizona, where the donkeys are just lying? They're lying on the boardwalk, and you kind of have to step over them. They're like, "This is our town. Get out."
Oh, really? What's it called again? How do you spell that?
It's Oatman. Like oats, Oatman. It's on Route 66 in Arizona.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
It's near Vegas, and they're there, and you can see wild burros hang out where wild horses are. Wherever they're left now, because there's so many have been taken off of their land. But that's in Colorado. I mean, that's the thing. You think about like the history and just like even Nevada going into Colorado was interesting with all the mining towns. We've been to some areas that were really interesting with that, and I don't know. Colorado is such a cool state. I mean, going
it is.
Like Ouray and then up into the Red Mountains, like that area is all mining and stuff. Leadville is where the headwaters for the Arkansas River is. I think we went through there. Yeah. We followed the Arkansas River to Arkansas, to Little Rock.
It was so cool.
Really? That's amazing. I'm actually going to camp on the Arkansas River this weekend. I'm going down there.
You are?
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it down by Buena Vista. So,
in the Salida area, that old beautiful, and it's so neat. It's so neat. There's like the Arkansas River has all these campgrounds, and there's bighorn sheep. Nancy saw a bighorn sheep the one day out there.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah, that is so cool.
We have bighorn sheep right here in Vail too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Going back to burros and donkeys is, and a thing to remember. So mining was, one of the main ways that Colorado was settled, right? It wasn't, especially in our mountainous regions, it wasn't good for farming or ranching necessarily, and anything west of the 100th meridian. We didn't have the moisture, so we're more of a desert environment and that. And so mining was the one of the main ways we were settled. And so burros and donkeys, they would get packed up. I mean, they would carry furniture and, all the supplies, before railroads even. They were the main settlers, the main ways of getting back into the West.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, they're steady. They're pretty steady as animals, and they are a little bit stubborn. Not bad, but yeah. They're like, no. They're so cool.
I want to ask about the oldest living man in America. Is this your granddaddy that you dedicate the book to?
Yes. So that my grandfather is dedicated. He actually lived. He was for a time the oldest living man in America at 111.
Wow.
Yeah. And after he passed away, I wrote that story just thinking of, gosh, all the things that he had seen.
A lot.
And
that whole century.
That story is in no way him. And yet, I just wanted to write a story like that. Like, what would you have seen? What would you have experienced? And then looking back, how would you feel about things, especially
now?
Even now, and looking. Well, it ends with the moonwalk on Apollo 11, but that span of time is amazing. Looking back, and literally how far. There's a lot of women in these stories, right? So how far women have come in that time period, and how women and men have changed their perspectives on one another. Then that's one of the major themes of the book is, how that has gone along. And the whole innocence versus wisdom is that, as we learn, these children learn, quote unquote, wisdom. What is wisdom, really? If we're learning to be and act in certain ways, especially ones tend to use women as the currencies of ambition, is that wisdom? Is that really wisdom? So it definitely plays on that as well. And I love that story because at the end there, I hope that it operates sort of as a hinge of forgiveness, moving back to the other stories and that are also, centered on that experience of, okay, is this wisdom? Is this wisdom?
I
what
love
are we
the
building
innocence
here?
and then going to wisdom part. I really love it because
Yeah.
there's that naive part that we all have, no matter what age, and because it's naive to a circumstance and how what tools do you have, and the tools you have to sharpen the tools, and that's what wisdom is to me. Is like you've now learned to sharpen the tools and utilize them over experience, and that's so important, and we can't just it's like success versus excellence. Success is quick, excellence is achieved over time. Yeah, that's cool.
Very much so. Yeah.
I like this. You rock, man. I love this. So here's all these short stories now. You've written 2 young adult novels. What's next?
Yeah, what are you going to do next? Thinking historic
I
novel?
want like a Rocky Mountain novel. I want like
exactly.
a Colorado.
I want a historic novel.
Like I know. I want her to write a historical fiction. Like
Yeah.
That's definitely on the plate. I actually just finished a humorous literary novel that is actually about a 38-year-old woman who ends up meeting an 83-year-old woman in sort of on a very bad day, and they have this interaction that leads to a friendship, and they end up doing a race, and then they go on a journey and then a quest. And there is much reflection and looking at the difference between, in modern times here, what the experiences and perspectives of a 38-year-old woman would be, and then what an 83-year-old woman would be.
Wow, that is super cool.
Yeah,
this is cool.
And so then they have all of these things that they do and bring, who they are to that, and yet at their heart, they're both females, and they have this deep connection. So... yeah, and they travel from the west side of Colorado into Utah, and then they end up going the other direction as well. And again, it's a tribute to the beautiful landscape. They're very much interacting with the landscape and all that's going on in those areas.
Oh my gosh, I want to read it.
Cool.
I want to read it. This is what's interesting about you. And your themes that you seem to have is women and history, the landscape of Colorado. And then you're looking at like 2 sides of the coin. I think that's really important now with what's going on in the country, that we appreciate both sides. Innocence, wisdom, 38, 83. You are looking at things both ways, I'd feel safe crossing the street with you. You'd look at both sides.
You'd look both ways before you move.
Yeah.
That's funny. It's a funny thing. So this book is just released, and I did an event earlier this week with the great Camille Dungy. I absolutely adore her. And we were talking about women in place, past and present, because she writes about that as well. And I said, I was never really a feminist until I had a daughter who started to hit her teen years. And Camille said, agreed. And her daughter's not as old as mine. But then she said, it's an interesting perspective where you end up looking back and forward and in the moment, all at once, hoping to create a place in a world where, your daughter will have an equal chance moving forward. And so I just thought that was so interesting that you're constantly looking forward and back and in the center. And I would agree, that's also where I come from, but she put it really well. Yeah.
I like that. We got to keep the women thing moving forward too. Like, just kind of keep our presence out there as, here we are. We didn't write the Constitution. I wonder what the Constitution would have been like if women had a say. I wonder.
That's a really interesting point.
It would have been really fun.
I think that deserves a short story. Come on.
We would you would add in that men can do housework too.
Hey, listen.
Equal opportunity.
And Colorado women though, I have a thing about Colorado taught me a lot. The homesteader women that came in over the years. I mean, they lived like in Greeley, Colorado, in the northeast corner, like right almost in going over to Wyoming. Yes. All these families came over as they dry farmed the prairie, but this is prairie that gets no ice, It's beautiful, by the way, the Pawnee National Grasslands and all of that area. And
Yes,
there were
love
women
it.
like Rattlesnake Kate. Have you heard of her?
No,
She went
Tell
out
me more.
and she was ended up being single for some reason. I can't remember what
that
happened
was,
with her
I
husband.
know why.
No, I don't know. But anyway, she had her kids at home, and she's out on horse, and I think she had a couple guys. She was ranching. There were a lot of women who ranched and ran these ranches on their own. Like the lady that was at Florissant Fossil Beds National Monument, one of my favorite parks. There was a homestead there. It was done like, here it is. This woman's running a farm, has kids, and is doing this, and it's ranching in Colorado. This is not easy stuff, and we're talking about way back when, before electricity, you know. And so Rattlesnake Kate, this is the coolest thing ever. Well, except for I love snakes. She went to go home, and she was on her horse. She got attacked. Well, like all these rattlesnakes, and you know, if you hit a rattlesnake den or a cave, there's like a nest of them. And she needed to get to her kids, and so she shot at them. She grabbed everybody else's rifle and like shot at them. Then they all ran out of bullets. She got off of her horse, or maybe it was a mule or a burro, who knows? Got off her horse and smashed them with the butt of the rifles and killed them all. I think she killed like 70-something rattlesnakes. I'm not sure. I think it was 76. I don't know why that number rings a bell, but could be wrong. So she killed them all, and everybody's like, holy cow. So she killed all of them. So she went and got them. After she went back to her kids, they gathered up the snake bodies. She skinned them all and made a dress into it. And she ended up being one of the top people for snake venom stuff. And she went into business being the snake venom lady, the rattlesnake venom. And then, check it out, Greeley, Colorado, the university there, that university has that is the research center and hub for rattlesnakes. I know because I've read a story about a guy, it's a National Geographic photographer, who got bitten by a rattlesnake in Yosemite, and did this whole thing about what happens to people. He almost died, and he just had a baby, and the baby, he could have got, the baby could have gotten it and everything. He ended up going to Greeley, Colorado, to learn about this. I'm sure Greeley loves me talking about it, but it's fascinating. And the Pawnee Grasslands they have rattlesnakes, but Rattlesnake Kate, I mean, that's the coolest story ever. It's just like, you know, these women that are, you got to go to Greeley.
I agree. For the most part, we're kind of a tough breed out here. You know, we just sort of put our heads down and do what needs to get done, and you know, and
Were you born in Colorado? Born and raised?
Well, I have been in Colorado all my life. Yeah. I was actually, I'm not going to go into the details, but I was born, my parents were traveling. I was born out of the state, but I literally have been here since I was a baby. So it was just kind of a fluke.
Yeah.
And so, I've been here my whole life, and I've lived all over the Front Range and in the mountains, and we spend a lot of time living in Vail. I love up here because when we're tired of snow in March or so, we can go head west into the deserts, you know, down over there by Colorado National Monument, and then into Moab. So, the whole state, you know, just steals my heart. I love it.
The sand dunes, the great sand dunes, too, the tallest sand dunes in America. In North America, it's amazing.
Those are surreal, aren't they? Yeah.
I want to go slide down those dunes. We didn't do that. We didn't have time when we were there, but I want to go sliding down the dunes. That's my next thing.
Bring yourself a box. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Exactly. Bring your own cardboard box, get in it like a cat, back to the cat, or a kid, get in it and slide down, man. It's cool.
How cool.
Yeah.
Well, please keep us posted on your next novel, too. This is exciting. I want to read it.
I will.
Yeah. And everybody,
absolutely.
for now, Lyrics for Rock Stars is out now. You can go to Heather's website, Author-Heather-Mateus-Sappenfield.com. And that's Mateus, Sappenfield.com. We love to play music for our guests and audience that kind of connects. And this song is a title track to the album. It's called Let the River Do the Running. So it's not, I'm sorry, I got it twirled around. It's not the title out. Wait, which one did I do? Department of the West. It is the title track. I love this album. That's my problem. Like choosing a song for you, it's like, can we just do the whole album? Department of the West. It is the title track, and it's by Deborah Crooks. she loves nature and history, and I wanted to play this for you since you're so connected to the West. So here it is. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
It was fun. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
You too.
Lost the job, now you're losing the house. Gonna pull one last log on the fire from a tree that planted long ago. Finally cut it down after decades watching it grow. Great grandpa spent a rifle on the hearth. Apaches call him Chief Wolf. Not a hater, still a fighter, Indian war guide. Time to smoke out this misplaced family pride. Here we stand, this land was never ours, no matter who spoke truth or who lied. Settle scores, this land was never ours. In a war, there are always two sides. Yeah, you're made of Irish, a little Cherokee. That's what you were always told. No one said who ventured into that squad CP. How honor can be bought, taken and sold. Split the wood, split it again, roll it down the hill that used to give you 10 cents for every log, eucalyptus, Monterey pine. Now you see so many things were never yours, never mine. Here we stand, this land was never ours, no matter who spoke truth or who lied. Settle scores, this land